The Gestapo. Those are not my words. Those are the words of podcaster and Trump booster Joe Rogan, who said this week, that's what it looks like ICE is becoming. And it looks like we are a country where you have to show your papers to the cops, where the streets are militarized, and where masked men are snatching people and disappearing them from our communities. And that looks like the Gestapo, the Nazi secret police. Again, that's Joe Rogan saying that. And he is right. Because the ICE agency that I once worked with to stop terrorist attacks is now an agency that Donald Trump is using to terrorize citizens and non-citizens alike. And that is what we will be talking about tonight. Every Wednesday on Defiance Daily, we do a special program, what we call the Weekly Mission Brief. That's tonight. And the mission? Defying Donald Trump's secret police. We will talk about what elected leaders and candidates for public office can do. And for that, we will be joined by conservative lawyer and Democratic congressional candidate George Conway. We will talk about what state and local leaders can do. And for that, we will be joined by former Portland District Attorney Mike Schmidt. And we will talk about what you can do, members of defiance.org, citizens, and patriotic Americans. And for that, we will be joined by representatives from MONARCA, the group on the ground that has been training people in Minnesota what to do if they make contact with ICE, and from witness.org, the global human rights organization that has been training people how to document the agency's abuses of power safely and legally. This is Defiance Daily, dispatches for the defiant. I'm your host, Miles Taylor, and welcome. I want to bring my co-founder, Xander Schultz, in at the top here for our discussion quickly about the win of the week. Xander, our whole theme today is defying Donald Trump's secret police. I don't say those words lightly, but that is what ICE is becoming. And when Donald Trump's own MAGA supporters like Joe Rogan are saying it, people should be unafraid to say it themselves. But the win of the week is that people are pushing back against this. And in Minnesota, I would say we've got at least 3 big wins. The state is behaving as it should. The state itself, Minnesota, is suing the federal government over these mass deployments of ICE into their communities. Prosecutors at the Justice Department are walking out. They are quitting their jobs because they don't agree with the direction this is going. Instead of investigating the ICE attacker, they have been asked to go investigate the widow of the woman who was killed. And finally, the people of Minnesota have risen up and they are protesting, and that inspired nationwide protests this past weekend. I want to get your reaction on that win of the week. I know it comes amidst some dark developments, but it shows that people are not intimidated.
It's not just not intimidated, Miles. It's good news on all fronts. We're seeing everyday people become more organized and more knowledgeable and more coordinated, which wasn't a given at the beginning of this. We haven't had to function in that way as just like the general populace before. Yeah. And we're seeing actual like local and state officials trying to fight back. And I think just seeing them try to fight back is almost more important than winning in the short term. We just need to believe that our representatives are going to be creative and explore ways. We know they're up against they're an underdog. This is a challenging situation. The federal government has a lot of power, a lot of authority, a lot of precedent, but we're in challenging times, and we need them to fight on our behalf or find others that will. And it seems like in Minnesota, they are choosing to fight on the people's behalf, which is really, really nice to see. And I hope we see it in other states as well.
Well, and I'm glad you said that, because this is not limited to Minnesota. And the big question, I think, on a lot of people's minds is, where the hell are our elected officials all across the country? Some are out there grandstanding, but a lot are doing a worse thing. They're completely silent. They've been intimidated by this administration. Now, there are people who are running for public office because of this. And I talked to one of them earlier today, friend of the program, George Conway. And I want you to have a listen to our conversation. He couldn't join us live, and apologies in advance, folks. If you have Verizon today, you probably experienced the cell phone outage. So we had a little bit of a spotty connection, but I want you to hear what George has to say, because he's running for public office in part because this is what's happening, because Donald Trump is building a secret police force and he's breaking through the Constitution's guardrails. Take a look. Man who needs no introduction, conservative lawyer George Conway, who is now doing a bold and, dare I say, defiant thing in running for Congress to hold this administration accountable. George, thank you for taking the time to join us.
Thanks for having me.
Look, I want to ask you, my friend, at the top end here about the controversy that's really enveloping the nation. I mean, last week we saw U.S. citizen Renee Nicole Good shot in her car by ICE agents. Just in the past 24 hours, we had one of Trump's biggest boosters during the 2024 campaign, podcaster Joe Rogan, come out and say that these guys look like the Gestapo. I mean, I feel like even when Donald Trump's own allies are waking up to this, that the country is waking up to this. Before we dive into the broader abuses of power of this administration and what you are doing about it, I want to get your take. I mean, is this a watershed moment in Americans realizing that the president is trying to have his own secret police?
Yeah, I think it may well be. It may well be one of those events that we will remember decades from now, like the Kent State massacre. It really is eye-opening. I mean, there have been shootings previously, but people weren't killed. They weren't shot in the face. It wasn't on video. And this is just a remarkable, I mean, it was just murder with people taping it with their phones. And you could see how she was completely non-threatening, that she was smiling at them. I don't hate you, bro. And you can see how he shot from the window, which means he wasn't in front of the car. You can see that she was only moving a couple of miles an hour. You can see her turn the wheel away from this officer. This person was presenting no danger. She was completely unarmed. The officer was not threatened. And there's utterly no justification for the shooting. If they wanted to arrest her, there are other ways to do that. It's just stunning. And what's even more stunning was the lies that the administration told immediately afterwards. Like before even seeing the tape, you had the tapes that you had Christine Nome basically saying that the officer was attacked, and you have all these lies that they pumped out there. And it just shows they lie about everything, and there's not one shred of remorse or sympathy or empathy or caring that a human life was taken. And then Trump basically saying they were mocking, he's saying that they were giving a hard time to these officers. Well, mockery doesn't justify murder. And I don't know. It's just hard to know, where this leads, but it's leading nowhere good. And you can't help but think that they actually want to provoke a violent reaction from people so that then they can ratchet up the violence on their end and use it to justify the force that they're already using on citizens. And then they're also, they're just video threatening other citizens with a similar fate by saying, you saw what happened. You don't want that to happen to you. Have you learned your lesson? It's like, we'll kill you too, is what they're saying. And it's appalling, and it's morally reprehensible and depraved. And that's what this administration is, depraved.
George, you and I are both recovering Republicans, but we are both still constitutionalists. And I took note that in your campaign launch for Congress, you talked a lot about the violations, not just of the law that this president has engaged in, but fundamentally of the Constitution.
Oh,
has there ever been an American president that has breached the guardrails of the Constitution to the extent that this man has?
He believes that he can do whatever he wants and then find some justification after the fact. And he believes that he doesn't believe in any kind of law that people who actually believe in law believe in. He believes that law is just after the fact justifying what he does and seeking retribution against anything that he doesn't like that other people do. And that's not law. That's just force. That's just brute force. That's savagery. And that's Donald Trump.
You know, when I look back at this first year of the second term, and you go and look at what our friends have written at places like Lawfare and Just Security, and you try to put metrics against it, I think, I don't know this for sure until there's a little more research done, I think this is the most lawless first year of any American presidency in history if you use as your metric federal courts ruling against the occupant of the Oval Office, including ruling that that administration's actions are unconstitutional. I can say with certainty in the modern era, it's the most lawless first year. And I'm pretty sure you can say with certainty that just in that first year, Donald Trump has committed more violations of law and the Constitution than any president in their entire term in the modern era. We have to do a little bit more research back in the 19th century, but I think we're pretty close to saying for sure this is the most lawless presidency already in American history. The courts are doing something about it, George, but you have decided, and I mean this very sincerely, to do something very brave, which is to say, I'm not going to sit on my ass and watch it and commentate on it. I'm going to go run for public office to do something about it. What was the tipping point for you, if there was one?
Well, I mean, the tipping point has been happening all year. I mean, I felt from the beginning, and I said this very early on, that whatever the courts do will not be enough. And I know some people who are friends of mine who are litigating bravely and vigorously, like my friend Norm Eisen, didn't like it when I said that because it expressed pessimism, but also, you know, the litigation helps. There's no question, because it sends the message that these people are lawless. But at the end of the day, there is no mechanism by which the courts can ultimately coerce Donald Trump to obey their orders. He can, if he decides tomorrow that he doesn't want to obey any court order, and they're already kind of doing it. They do it in a dog ate my homework sort of way, where they say, oops, oh, we didn't get the chance to notify the people on the ground over there. And oh, we interpreted the comma that you put in that injunctive relief order differently. If he just decides, like, okay, fine, enforce your own order, Chief Justice Roberts, then what would happen would be that the Justice Department is ultimately who the courts have to go to enforce their orders in two ways. One is the U.S. Marshal Service can go out and arrest people who are being held in contempt, and that the U.S. Marshal Service is part of the Justice Department, reports to Pam Bondi, and ultimately, Pam Bondi's not been good enough. Ultimately, it goes right to the White House. They're basically trying to take over the DOJ directly from the West Wing now. And that's one point. And then two is if the Bureau of Prisons, right? Where do you put the people who are in contempt of court? You put them in the Bureau of Prisons. Well, who runs the Bureau of Prisons? The United States Department of Justice. Who does that report to? Well, that's now going to be a wholly owned, that's going to be a wholly owned office within the West Wing of the White House again. So if Donald Trump decides tomorrow that he is absolutely not going to obey any court order he does not like, well, where are we? And what we have to do is people have to get out on the streets, which they have been doing this year. And I've been heartened by the No Kings movement, and I've been out there myself. And at the end of the day, what the framers of the Constitution provided for a lawless president was impeachment and removal. And Congress has been completely AWOL. The Republicans in Congress have been completely shirking their duties, and they know better. I mean, the real check on the president is what the framers provided for, the mechanism of removing a lawless president, removing a president who commits high crimes and misdemeanors. Now, obviously, that is not self-executing either, because Congress doesn't have an army. But, if the Congress of the United States, which is represents all of the people of the United States, both the Senate and the House, declares that he is no longer fit to serve office, and then declares that he's no longer in the office in pursuance of the procedures in the Constitution, well, then if he doesn't leave, he's just not president anymore. And that is the ultimate solution to this. And we are way past the point where this man should be impeached and removed. Way past. Un-American and so fascist. We are now basically, the affairs of the United States of America are being conducted essentially by a mob boss. He is running, he's running a protection racket. We see with the law firms, with the universities, and he's using federal funds to coerce people into acceding to him, and using the immigration thing as an excuse to subjugate people.
Well, I'm glad you point that out, because first, I agree with you that there has been a Christmas tree of impeachable offenses already. We are well past the point that Donald Trump should be impeached again.
It's all coal. It's all coal.
That's right. That's right. And this time removed. But you note, you just alluded to something that the president said this week, which is that starting February 1st, he is going to cut off federal funds to blue states. Yeah. We are talking about counterterrorism grants and social services and transportation and infrastructure. He's going to shut it all down unless they get on board with his extremist immigration agenda. That alone, that threat and its execution, I would argue, is a high crime and misdemeanor if there ever was one.
Absolutely.
That is impeachable.
Yeah, and that is impeachable, and it directly harms my constituents, the constituents I hope to represent, and it just harms people in blue states, but it also harms people in red states. I mean, the people who need cheaper healthcare are people in red states. They voted for Trump. Okay, they need a lot. They need grocery prices to stay low. They need all of those things, and Trump does not give a damn about them. And for some reason, they've thought he convinced them into thinking that Trump actually cared about them, and he told lies all last year about how he was going to take care of inflation. And now he's saying affordability is a hoax. It's like, excuse me. Whatever happened to the monitoring of the consumer price index? What is that? It's all lies and a smokescreen to justify his acquisition of power and control and wealth. He's made more money than anybody ever possibly could have dreamed of making from public office. Most corrupt thing ever. I mean, this all relates. We cannot function as a country. We cannot make things better for people, whether it's in the 12th congressional district or New York, the New York City generally, New York State generally, anywhere in the country until he is gone. And I mean, it's no longer a political issue. This is a moral issue. This is a constitutional issue. This is an obligation of members of Congress. Members of Congress, like the president, swear an oath to the Constitution. And that oath, the Constitution includes faithfully carrying out the impeachment clauses. Congress has an obligation to impeach and to remove miscreants, people who commit high crimes and misdemeanor. And if this man is not impeached, and if some of his minions aren't impeached, what's the point to having the impeachment clause? What's the point to having a constitution if the Constitution, if the members of the first branch of government in Article 1, which is Congress, fail to take their duties seriously and fail to call to account the President of the United States for basically dismissing the Constitution and disobeying his mandate to help the people? So it's like, this isn't about, even if you don't have the votes, you have an obligation to push it as hard as you can. But I think that if the elections are held in 2026, and that's another issue, he's going to stop that, because he knows, he's been talking about, if we lose, I'm going to get impeached and removed. He knows that. I mean, this has to happen. I don't think this country can make it to January 2029 with him as president throughout that time.
Well, two final questions for you, George, in order. The first, what gives you hope that the rule of law will be restored? One. And number two, how can people join Team Conway?
All right. Well, I'm going to answer the second question first, because I've been trained as a newly minted politician. I've been trained by my staff to say, George Conway for Congress.com. Anytime anybody gives me the opportunity, and I'll say it now and I'll say it later. To go back to the question of what people can do, look, I mean, it's up to us. This is up to us. Again, the courts are doing a marvelous job, at least the lower federal courts that we've discussed. But at the end of the day, it's our Constitution and our country. And what people need to do is to go out there and express their support for constitutional government and their opposition to this authoritarian outburst by Trump. And that's what the New Kings rallies have been about. And I hope there's another one soon. I mean, and remember, social scientists have this study. They've studied this, and if it's a lot. I shouldn't say all it takes, but if you get 3.5% of a population out on the streets, that's basically enough to affect change. Mm-hmm. And that's consistent throughout, in democracies that are struggling to survive. And the other thing is to vote, and also, to vote and to basically make that connect. I mean, people are starting who may have voted for Trump but aren't fully Trumpers. They're starting to understand, like, this guy's not really for them. And again, it's like it requires people to speak out and just not wring their hands and say, "Oh, let's be honest, people don't get it. It's not terrible." It's like, you've got to tell people. You've got to tell people, even if it's unpleasant, even if it's your neighbor, even if it's your family, even somebody on the street, that this is wrong and this is dangerous and this is harming all of us, including the people who supported Trump. And it's the inertia of people of saying, I can't do anything. It's like, it's just, I got to turn the TV off. It's so depressing, which it is. But we have to stand up for this. We have to stand up for democracy, or else we won't have a democracy. And it's like, people worry, they save up their money and they want to give it to their kids. The most important thing we can give to our children is a functioning democracy that functions for the people. And if we don't do something about this soon, we won't be able to bequeath this to our children. And again, I go back to what the following my campaign staff instructions: www.georgeconwayforcongress.com.
George Conway, award-winning lawyer, candidate for Congress, and American patriot. Thank you for what you are doing, my friend. We are going to be cheering you on, and we hope to have you back. All right. Well, I blame Verizon and the outage today for some of that choppiness, but it was great to have George with us. Xander, I want to get your reaction here on the back end.
Yeah, great interview, Miles. I had two thoughts. One, I keep oscillating between completely giving up on Congress in terms of impeachment and wanting to fight for it, and wanting to support strategies around it. Yeah. And I did some research while your interview was going on. So I have this to say to the Republican members of Congress that are not supporting impeachment still and have reservations, because they have some idea that they're somehow going to come out better on the other side of this. Just a stat around what happens when a dictator with total immunity takes control. Stalin's Soviet Union, the Central Committee, elected in 1934 139 members. Any guesses in terms of how many of those people were executed or died in prison of the 139?
Oh, no, but I'm really eager to know.
98. Placating dictators and not trying to upend this journey that we're on right now, the straight line, horrendous path that we're on, will not play out well for you either. You're often the first to go. You can look up Hitler's The Night of Long Knives as well. And so
it doesn't work. It doesn't work. So that's one. And I hope they hear that. And I hope they really do their learn their history before it's too late. Number two, he talked about us getting out on the streets. I've heard that a lot. Americans have heard that a lot. You got to get out there and on the streets. I think we need to review our playbook there, because we set a date. We also set a date we go home. And you see how that differs from what we saw in Bangladesh, from what we are seeing in Iran, when people are really fighting for keeps. And so I think we learned a certain playbook around the civil rights movement, and we might need to update it for this era. And I'm just curious, in talking to movement leaders, folks who have led large marches, not just here, but around the world, led large movements, and like what actually needs to happen when you're playing for keeps. Yeah. Yeah. Good point. Good point all around. Well, look, our next guest today is going to talk to us about some of that, has a little bit of experience on that front. And let me just remind folks, we have got a few more folks to chat with today. We're going to talk in a moment here to former Portland District Attorney Mike Schmidt, who joins us, and then two organizations that are doing real things on the ground. That's what the weekly mission brief is all about. If you are not a member of defiance.org, this is a moment to consider why you should join, because every single week we take an action, a real action together to go support the people on the ground doing things to fight back against these abuses of power. So let's bring Mike Schmidt into the conversation. Mike, you have lived this, my friend. You have been that local prosecutor on the front lines holding a lawless federal government accountable. And I just want to say, first, applause to you for that. And thank you for taking the time to join us.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Just want to say I'm a defiance.org member, pay my $10 a month. So
let's go. Let's go. Miles, also, Mike is from Portland, so you got to give him snaps instead of applause. It's our hipster way up here.
That's right. That's right. I'm getting an echo on you, Xander. Is that just me? I'm looking at our producer, Mercedes.
I got it too.
Okay. Yeah. I'm getting a double Xander. Not that we don't want double Xander. I mean, we'll take double Xander. Mike, let me throw the first question at you. Your reaction to everything that you've been seeing on the ground in Minnesota, but also like bottom line up front, what can local prosecutors do when a federal agency like ICE is obviously breaking the law?
Yeah. Well, I think like so many other people, what I've been seeing on the ground is horrific. It is a campaign designed to cause fear in people's hearts, to keep people silent, to scare them into not showing up. It is terrorism. They're terrorizing communities. So that's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing in terms of prosecutors, district attorneys, it was heartening to see the 6 prosecutors walk off the job. For the U.S. DOJ. Obviously, they weren't able to do their job, what they were trained to do, and decided that they could no longer be complicit in the administration. That was heartening. And what I'm seeing from the local district attorney there, my friend Mary Moriarty, very heartening. I see that she's not taking no compliance, or when the FBI says we're not going to share our investigation with local law enforcement, she is doing what I think all district attorneys and law enforcement and local communities should be doing. She is saying, bring me the evidence. We can prosecute these cases in state court.
Mike, can you expand on that? I've still got a bad echo over here, but we spoke earlier in the week about what the process is to try to charge ICE in the case where they're breaking the law recklessly. Can you walk people through the same process you walked me through? You had 3 great steps on how this actually plays out and what the barriers are.
Yeah, well, I think maybe that's a little bit better. Take my headphones out. I think it's important, first of all, the first stage is gathering evidence. And as any prosecutor worth their salt would tell you, that you first have to do an investigation. And I know what I saw in the video, and it was horrific, but there's still other evidence you need to gather. You need to gather statements from other witnesses, from other officers. Those are all things that we would do in any kind of local law enforcement use of force. You want to know what was in the mind of the person who pulled the trigger. You want to know what their training is. You want to know what are the administrative procedures. It takes an investigation, even though what I saw on the ground was certainly abhorrent. I certainly would not have what we saw this administration do, come out and say, oh, this is completely justified and they didn't do anything wrong. And that is so anathema to real, true law enforcement. So first step is you got to gather evidence. And so we saw what the FBI has done, and they've shut off local law enforcement. So I'm heartened that people are gathering evidence. In my experience in the 2020 protests, when we had federal agencies here on the ground, one of the biggest challenges was knowing who the shooter was in one of the cases that we tried to investigate. The masks that law enforcement's wearing, covering their badges and their names, not even being able to identify what federal agency they are with. Those are all impediments to holding individual officers accountable for their behavior and their actions. We don't have that in the Renee Good case. It's very clear who this officer is. It's clear who did the shooting and what was going on. So that's an impediment that in this specific case isn't there, but prosecutors across the country could very much face those impediments as they look to gather evidence to hold officers accountable. So that's one of the first things is just being able to gather the evidence of who is there, and do a good investigation.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the things I want to ask you, and we can get to the others, but Mike, it strikes me that these guys, and by that I mean ICE, the administration, they are becoming, in a very scary way, trigger happy, which means we need to be trial happy. We need to be ready to sue them. And I have been heartened to see so many states and locals bringing the legal fight to the administration. There's a great example recently of Illinois, the Attorney General filing lawsuit against Kristi Noem and ICE. And here's a top state official explaining the lawsuit and why they're taking it on.
Today, the Illinois Attorney General, with the cooperation of our office and the City of Chicago, filed a lawsuit in federal court against DHS, Secretary Kristi Noem, and other defendants. The lawsuit argues that ICE and CBP agents engaged in unlawful activities, including swapping or altering license plates to conceal their identities. Illinois will not stand for federal agents disregarding our laws and compromising public safety. We have a fundamental responsibility to protect our residents, to uphold the law, and to hold people accountable for their illegal actions. Through our Plate Watch hotline, we've received hundreds of tips and uncovered repeated violations of Illinois state law. This became one of the bases for the lawsuit. Tampering with license plates is illegal, it's dangerous, and it will not be tolerated. Illinois law strictly prohibits masking, swapping, or altering license plates because these actions undermine public safety. We will continue to fight for accountability and the safety of everyone on Illinois roads.
Mike, they found a legal hook there, and this isn't just important because it's creepy that these agents are masking themselves. It's important because we just saw news stories today that criminals are now masking themselves and pretending they are ICE and committing crimes against people, violent offenses. This is bad. We got to get rid of this. So my question for you is, how can we get more states and cities to do this kind of thing?
Yeah, well, what I love about that, is he says, right, like he's found another area of the law that is maybe not so challenging as use of force. Use of force can be very challenging because of protections that federal and other law enforcement individuals have. But he's found something pretty objective. Swapping license plates, apparently in Illinois, is against the law. I love that they're going after that. I've been seeing legislators, I believe California, Washington, I know Oregon is considering it, talking about anti-masking laws. And obviously there would be the ability for law enforcement in undercover situations to do that. But in general, law enforcement would no longer be able to mask, hide their badges, hide their names. Things like that, I think, are very important to have on the books, and then they must be enforced. And it's more objective. It's a lot easier to prove those types of cases for local law enforcement. So, I mean, I appreciate that. The other thing I just want to say, I love that I saw underneath the banner, he set up a hotline, right? And so he said people are calling in from all over the state. He is gathering the evidence. His agency is gathering the evidence that then he will be able to use not only in lawsuits. I'm sure he's going after injunctions and other things to stop them from doing those actions, but he's not dependent on subpoenaing these federal agencies for that information. I think everybody, all local law enforcement need to have those types of things set up, and they need to be able to take evidence in for people anonymously. In my experience, and especially right now, a lot of people are still distrustful of law enforcement in general. And so we need to be able to take evidence from them, even if it means it's anonymous.
I so liked your answer to that I felt like I had to put my Defiance hat back on. Mike, such a good point. And I'll give credit to our producer, Mercedes. Before you said that, she was writing in our chat, the fact that he put the hotline on the screen was fantastic. And you called it right out. I mean, look, they're using people power here. Xander, let me throw it back over to you.
No, I think, just to wrap up here, Mike, this club is about action, and you are giving us a couple clear action steps, but I want to make sure you're able to say them really clearly before we leave here. Can you go through the 2 action steps that you're leaving us with? And Defiance members, we are going to synthesize this and put it in your inbox and give you a bunch of places to find out how to follow these steps. But go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, talk to your local law enforcement. Let them know that you want and expect them to investigate and prosecute state law, even as it pertains to federal actions. I see too many individuals saying, oh, well, these cases are so hard. We're never going to be successful. They're going to be removed to federal court. Our subpoenas are going to be squashed. Do it anyway. Bring these, do the investigations, gather evidence locally, and bring the prosecutions. There is still benefit in deterrence. When individual officers are being charged with state crimes, you will deter other officers' behavior. And second of all, it tests the boundaries. Xander, when you and I were talking, I used the Jurassic Park analogy. We need to be checking the fences right now. We need to be seeing where the power really lies. Because if there are laws that are failing us, let's find out what those laws are. Let's change them. So step 1, talk to your local law enforcement, tell them that you expect investigations and prosecutions where state law has been violated. And then the second one we've already covered, which was local law enforcement officials need to be setting up their own evidence gathering hotlines and encourage everybody to be able to bring evidence that local law enforcement can use.
Super
Mike Schmidt,
important.
thank you for guidance in these confusing times. These are incredibly challenging times. There's no playbook in America for this. We don't know what is and isn't possible. And so it's wonderful for someone who's sat in your shoes and really been personally attacked by this regime and dealt with this type of occupation the last time around to so clearly let us know what we should and shouldn't be doing, what we should be asking for from our local leaders. So thank you. And thanks for joining us today, man. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, fellas. Shout out to my fellow prosecutors out there that are doing the really frontline hard work.
Totally.
They're holding the line for us. And so Mary Moriarty and so many others are stepping up to keep us safe in our communities. Support them.
Amen.
Thanks,
Thank you for joining us, Mike. Yeah, and for listeners, if you were watching yesterday, I mean, we played a clip of Larry Krasner, the district attorney in Philadelphia, really just letting loose and saying that they are not going to allow federal agencies to come into their area and break the law. I thought that was fantastic. And Mike's one of those, patriots who draws the line there.
100%. 100%. Should we keep it rolling? We've got more actions, more
Let's
great
keep
guests
it
to chat
rolling.
with.
Look, guys, this is the weekly mission brief. We are going to do something. And you just heard from Mike, one of the things, we'll talk about that at the end, that you can do to press local prosecutors and police to hold ICE accountable. But we're going to bring in 2 other folks that represent organizations that are doing real stuff on the ground to make sure that we are not letting these lawless actions stand. So very excited to welcome into the conversation Laura Flynn, who one of her hats that she wears is she works with a group called MONARCA that has been on the ground in Minnesota doing know your rights trainings for hundreds, thousands of people to help them know how to deal with the ICE invasion of their communities. And I think we have with us, do we have Jackie from witness.org? We do have Jackie in the conversation. Both of you, so excited to welcome you. And of course, witness.org, if you're not familiar with Witness, they're a global human rights organization that has done a great deal of work on, well, it's in their name, witnessing, bearing witness to abuses of power around the world, including some very powerful guidance on how to document ICE. Look, Laura, I want to start with you and just get your take. I think right now you are currently in Minnesota, unless you fled the state in the past few hours. I want to get your take on what's going on the ground there, and how have people been empowered to know their rights amidst this assault?
Yeah, so let me first just say we're in the 45th day of a federal occupation of really the state, but particularly of my city of Minneapolis. I live about 15 blocks from where Renee Good was murdered. And there are at least 3,000 federal agents. They lie about everything, so it's hard to know, but they have surged at least 3,000 federal agents into the city 2 additional surges in the last 2 weeks, the first of which led directly to Renee's murder. They, just for context, there's only 400,000 people in Minneapolis. We have fewer than 600 police officers. So if you can try to imagine what that kind of surge looks like, it's pretty bad in St. Paul too, but at Minneapolis is the epicenter. So my husband was shoveling snow yesterday. He saw 5 different ICE patrols in 15 minutes while he was shoveling. You can't walk outside your house without seeing them. They are masked, they are heavily armed, they are in caravans, and they are pursued by observers in electric vehicles, on bicycles, and on foot, who are following them throughout the city to try to document, observe, de-escalate where possible, make noise, and create a community defense system for all of us as we try to respond to this. They also have, they're using basically economic sanctions against the state of Minnesota. They've cut off all childcare funding to the state. They've also cut food stamps for the whole state. So this is a totally illegal action, obviously. They intend to break the back of the resistance here in Minneapolis. And I think they are going to these lengths because they have encountered tens of thousands of people, unified, disciplined, trained, who are meeting them day after day. I mean, just in my neighborhood, which is about 10 square blocks, on the signal channel where we're responding, there's over 900 people prepared to stand up at any time and step out and defend their neighbors. So that's kind of the scale of what we're at here. I would say it's kind of we are waging a nonviolent war against federal occupation.
Laura, when we touched base earlier, you talked about a number of things MONARCA is leading, a number of ways they are preparing citizens to be this active. It's been really impressive watching just how resilient the people of Minneapolis have been. And it's my understanding MONARCA has been at the center of that. Can you go through a couple of the ways you're preparing citizens and why you think you've been so successful in Minneapolis? Like what other cities can learn from that? So it's a 2-part question.
So I think, first of all, I just want to say there's a vast ecosystem of organizations and people are throwing down and not necessarily claiming credit, because we are really in an all hands on deck. So I don't want to claim everything. MONARCA is a critical piece of infrastructure because since January, they've trained 26,000 people, and they're continuing to do trainings, and people are showing up. Even at the night Renee Good was killed, 600 people came to a training. No one is backing off. Like, people are actually flooding to these signal chats. So it's first training, which involves know your rights, which is important, although I think it's also important to underline they are absolutely operating beyond any of our rights. I mean, federal agents have, the whole argument about the murder, it's like they had no right to stop her. They have no right to make traffic violations. They had no right to tell her to get in her car. None of that. They are not law enforcement. So that's a big part of our rights. But knowing your rights in this situation we have to document and we have to stake out our rights, and they are operating completely outside of any kind of human rights framework. So that's just a piece of that. But so know your rights, documentation, de-escalation tactics. And I think this has been a big part of why we've been, I wouldn't say we're winning here, but we are holding the line. And I think it's because people are being very disciplined, not drawn into a physical or active conflict in most cases. So there's like and the number, it's like very normal people all across the state taking these stands, and that's helping too. So it's not only activists, who I have no problem with activists, but it's like old people, it's young people, it's religious people, it's like across it's moms. And I think that it's a community response. We can't do any of this alone. We have to come in numbers. People are teaming up to patrol. Like every night in my neighborhood, we have, I would say about 50 people who help close down all the stores and shops so that people get home safely. Most businesses are locked at this point. I mean, I'm just trying to give you a sense of it's not life as normal here. Like, all the businesses are locked and they let people in one by one because otherwise ICE can just come in. So that's like restaurants. And
one of the things, Laura, that I saw was, the training that we mentioned this past weekend. I mean, you guys are bringing people out in droves, and not just MONARCA, like you said, other organizations. But this shows me that the intimidation's not working from the administration.
No, it's not
They
working.
are so mad, and they want to know what they can do. That to me is, amidst, again, all the darkness, pretty inspiring to see.
Yes. And I think that's the part of it that's like incredible. Like the harder they come, the harder we come, and the stronger. There's also like mass mutual aid happening to feed people who can't go outside and can't be out there. And so some people are able to go out and respond and be directly in front of ICE, and other people are bringing food to people who are stuck home. So it's like there's a place for everyone to be. I do think what's been really important about the MONARCA and other trainings is that people need to know what to do. It's very, very disempowering, and it's obviously terrifying. And the truth is that doing a training like this prepares you to understand there are simple steps you can take to be together. The whistles actually work. I mean, when they are surrounded by, and more what we're seeing is that they are like, they cannot go anywhere in the city without being followed by a caravan of cars, and they can't take an action anywhere without a dozen people and then 100 people showing up, filming them, documenting them, blowing whistles, honking horns, alerting neighbors to what is happening. And so what they're doing is they're snatching people from bus stop. They're trying to do real quick things like that, snatching people. And as I think you all know, they're snatching anyone. There are indigenous people who are being detained right now. There are refugees who have legal status, green card holders. So it's.
I made this point early in the week. Most of the Somali population in Minneapolis is native born. Even the idea that this is an immigrant population is kind of BS. So, Miles, before you move on, I just want to make one quick note. America is exceptional in a lot of ways, some good, some bad. It was unknown to me how we would show up when a city faced what it's facing in Minneapolis. And it's great to hear we're showing up in all the ways you would hope. There's collective action. There's protection of your neighbors. There's mutual aid. There's resolve. It feels like a keep strong, carry on moment for our country in some ways. And it's just so wonderful to hear. Miles, I know you've got more questions, but I just wanted to point that out. And the point you brought up about the normal people that are getting in the mix. ICE wants to fight someone that looks like me. The more we can have people who maybe don't feel empowered, the moms, the children, the old people, the clergy, etc., on the front lines, the better. And I hope our listeners feel empowered by that news as well. Go ahead, Miles.
Well, no, look, to that end, I was going to say, I want to bring Jackie Zamuto into the conversation. I mean, Jackie, you're an assistant director at Witness, and you all have done some very specific, concrete things on how to respond to an invasion of a federal police force like ICE. And in fact, the things that you all have urged people to do, we have seen in Minnesota, have been instrumental in calling out these abuses of power. Now, I don't want to scoop you there. I mean, tell us a little bit about what Witness has recommended in the past, the resources you all have made available for something like this.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. So Witness started creating a number of resources around specifically how to film ICE during the first Trump administration. We were wondering, we're seeing an escalation in arrests and detentions, and seeing the potential of video and documenting those abuses, and wondering, how can we get involved? What guidance can we share? And we spoke with a lot of groups that were organizing on the ground, a lot of legal professionals who were saying, we have a lot of Know Your Rights trainings, but one of the questions that comes up in all those trainings is, how do you document? How do you film? How do you do this safely and effectively so that can actually be used in a court hearing or in the media? And so that's where we tried to step in and create some resources. And I think it's important to say that documentation is just one tool in this broader toolbox. Like Laura was talking about, the community organizing piece is instrumental. Doing this collectively is so critical. We often advise people to work in teams to document, because that allows you to get a broader range of angles, of shots. You can have different people focusing on different details. You can put people who are maybe less at risk or more comfortable taking risk closer to the action, and people farther away getting broader, wide shots that show, the way that ICE is parked in the street, the setup that they have, the uniforms that they're wearing. So a lot of this work has come out of the first Trump administration, and we are continuing to update it and keep this work going. It's really distressing, but also heartening to see the types of community organizing that Laura was talking about. And I think that it goes without saying that video documentation plays an important role in exposing the lies of the administration and upholding narratives of the people who are being most impacted by this. It helps provide evidence for the legal cases that are being brought forth, like your previous guest was talking about. And it also shows that oftentimes ICE is acting against their own protocols, which are, all over the place at the moment, but it gives some clear evidence that violations are happening, that people are being abused, and that human rights violations are taking place every day because of ICE and immigration enforcement.
But before I pitch back to my colleague Xander, I'll just say that was something that I was slow to react to at the beginning of all of this when Trump came back, is using the lexicon of human rights abuses, because we're so not used to saying that in the United States. I mean, we will say that there has been violations of the law and violations of people's rights, but I mean, calling it human rights abuses. And I'll never forget, in April, after the executive order against me from the president, I got a phone call from one of our friends in the space, and she said, "You're the victim of a human rights violation." Now, I don't have a victim mentality about it, but that was sort of jarring to me. I was like, that's something I think about that happens over there and not here. So I'm just, glad to hear you say that, Jackie. We've got to acclimate ourselves to that. Sorry, Xander, go ahead.
Jackie, I'm just so grateful you guys are out there. I think throughout history and when kind of the tide has turned in certain movements, it's often been the documentation of something, right? You think about the dogs biting children in the civil rights movement, Napalm Girl in Vietnam, Elon Kurdi, the refugee child washing up on the beach.
Yeah.
Sorry, I worked in the refugee crisis, so it's like that one hits me.
That was
George Floyd,
really
etc.
disturbing. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm just so grateful you guys are out there doing it. One of the things that struck me in the Renee Good footage is not only that we had footage of it, but the value of having multiple angles and indisputable evidence. And so it seems like in this era where ICE has its own propaganda going, there's their own propaganda news channels. It's not just making sure it's documented, but there's this 360 indisputable evidence is needed like ever before. And so can you speak to like some of the new challenges around documentation, plus like the challenges facing that in the era of AI and other ways to dispute these propaganda, what you're facing and how you get over those humps?
Yeah, that's something we're talking a lot about right now at Witness is, how do we document in a way that we can make sure that people can verify the content that is being shared and that people can trust what they're seeing? Because when Witness started over 30 years ago, there was the saying, seeing is believing. And we're in a very different era now. And so we are often providing guidance for people to do really basic things, like make sure when you're filming that you capture landmarks, street signs, things that are locally recognizable that can help verify the content that you're sharing. Also, like you said, the 360 angle is really helpful. Having multiple angles can help verify what happened and where it took place. We oftentimes are recommending that folks do not post content on social media immediately because we are seeing an increased targeting of people who are posting. We're seeing, people being identified in footage. So we ask people to take precautions to either blur footage or not post it, or share it in a private way with people who are most affected. So potentially the family of victims, lawyers who are working on the case, local officials who might be able to support investigations. I think it's really important to keep in mind that we shouldn't be exposing people's identity without their consent to the best of our ability at this point. We're seeing also a huge uptick in surveillance technologies that are being used against protesters. So there has actually been a little bit of a movement towards going back to old school cameras, to cameras that are not necessarily connected to different GPS systems or online, and so that you can film without your information being tracked. We're seeing suggestions to use burner phones. There's been recent workshops on how to set up a burner phone for documentation. These are some of the tactics that we're seeing people use. And in terms of AI, you know, there is a lot of disturbing content going around. I read recently that in regard to the Renee Good case, that people were using Grok, you know, the Elon Musk AI bot, to unmask the agent that that murdered her. And this has led to several other individuals who were not ICE agents, but who do live locally, being targeted, receiving harassment and threats because of this. And so that's one of the disturbing uses of AI that we're seeing. Also, we saw an article, I think in Mother Jones, about how someone also used Grok, and this is quite disturbing, but there's a feature on Grok to essentially undress or modify the clothing of an individual in an image. And someone actually used Grok to do that to Renee Good's image. And this is where, you know, a lot of witnesses' work is around documentation, but also around advocacy about how AI tools are being built, how they're being used against human rights protocols. And so a lot of the work and advocacy that we're doing is to try to reinforce that while AI does have potential, there's also a lot of harm that can happen when these things are built with profit in mind, with speed, and, you know, like this kind of race to the top, and not considering the actual human impact that these types of tools can have on people.
Well, I want to do I want to do one thing. I know we're super tight on time here, and we want to give you guys on the back end of this a quick announcement that we're very excited about. But let me just show you part of a clip, and I want to get the reaction from both of you quickly on the back end. This is a U.S. citizen in Minneapolis who responded to ICE agents. And I want to talk on the back end about what she did right, and lessons people can take away from this. Here's the clip.
Do you have an ID on you, ma'am?
I don't need an ID to walk around in my city. This is my
Okay,
city.
do you have
This is
some
my
ID
home.
then, please?
I don't need an
If
ID.
not, we're going to put you in the vehicle and we're going to ID you.
I'm gonna ID you.
Huh?
I'm not going to take out. You take out your ID.
You don't have an ID?
I'm not going to take out an ID.
Hey man,
I am U.S. citizen. I am U.S. citizen.
All right, can we see an ID, please?
I am U.S. citizen. I don't need to carry around an ID in my home.
Well,
this is my home.
Where were you born?
This is my home.
Where were you born?
Minneapolis is my home.
Ma'am, we're doing an immigration check. We're doing a citizen check.
This is
and
where
we're asking you where you were born.
This is where I belong. This is my home.
Ma'am, you can belong here, but where were you born?
And I am not going to give you an ID.
Then we're going to put you in the vehicle until we can ID you.
I belong here. I should be walking around here free. I shouldn't be afraid in my life at this point.
Ma'am, do you have an ID to give us?
No.
Yes, you're correct.
You making me a scare. You making me a
Do you have an ID?
This is my home.
Ma'am, where were you born?
I am U.S. citizen. I am U.S. citizen. And I don't think so you have a right to picture me while I am in my home and walking around in my home. This is not acceptable. You guys, you're terrorizing people,
ma'am,
and it's not
where
acceptable.
were you born?
It doesn't matter where I was born. I belong here. I am U.S. citizen. What else can I say? I am citizen. This is my home.
You realize that if you lie that you're a U.S. citizen,
Minneapolis is my home.
Then you can get
Minneapolis
federal
is my
charges.
home. I belong here. I'm sorry. I belong here.
Yes.
I'm not gonna take out an ID. What the fuck?
They walk away, and thank goodness they walk away. Although one thing I want to note is you hear those whistles in the background. Laura, you mentioned the whistles earlier. Those have made a difference. I'm proud to say that Defiance.org and Defiance members have given close to 20,000 whistles to affected communities nationwide. I think we're one of the biggest givers of whistles out there, and they are making a difference. But importantly, the woman, as she was responding, she was cool, she was calm, she was collected. What's your take? Let me start with you, Laura, and then I'll jump. Then we'll jump over to you as well.
And she stayed calm, you know. I think she was afraid, but she managed to stay calm despite that. I mean, I think it's a choice. People can show their ID. Many people are showing their ID, right? But she took up a lot of their time, which I really appreciated. And she made a point that she's not obligated to show them her ID. They did take her picture, which means they probably did facial identification.
That was a creepy part of the video for sure.
That's what they did, and I think they do have enough. I don't know their actual technological capacities. They're sort of acting like they can immediately identify whether or not you're a citizen. I'm not. I don't actually. I would be interested what you think. I don't know if they really can, but that's certainly the impression they're trying to give to people, that we just can ID you this way.
I mean, I
appreciate that she wasted a lot of their time.
Yeah, I mean, ICE does have the capacity to do that. It's something that has been done without public debate, without the consent of Congress. I mean, we could do a whole episode on how some of the tools that have been given to ICE totally backdoor all the debates we had after 9/11 about the government having extensive surveillance powers. They're just buying the technology. They're not even debating it in front of Congress anymore. But Jackie, I mean, one of the upsides of this was, look, it was filmed. It was filmed, and we have evidence of this, and we can see this, and we can draw some lessons from it. And I want to know if there are any others that you would point out.
I don't have a lot to add. I do think it was remarkable how calm she stayed, and I think that's evidence of people being informed about what their rights are, whether it's through a formal training or through, you know, just word of mouth circulating within a community saying, like, you don't have to do this, you don't have to comply with them asking for your ID. I think it was great that she was filming. She was calm enough to stay pretty steady. If you needed to, you could slow down that video and more easily capture the badges on the officers, on their uniforms. You could probably capture some information about the cars around them. I think it was really interesting to hear the whistles in the background and the honking, and I would assume that gave that individual a little bit more confidence. And I think that's a really important thing. And that's one of the biggest takeaways for me, is if she had been there on her own, this might have gone differently. And so I think it again speaks not just to the purpose of documentation, but of collective community action.
That's right. And a couple of other just quick things to note, you know, other things she could have done. She could have said, you know, am I under arrest, or am I free to go, and put it on those agents to move on. And also, of course, ask for those ID numbers, ask for their names, to sort of shift the conversation over to them. Hi, I'm a U.S. citizen. I don't need to show you my ID. Who are you, and what is your ID? And of course, to make sure, as you note, to capture those things on film for documentation. I think all of that is very important. All the more reason folks should do those Know Your Right trainings, which is probably the right segue, Xander, for me to hand it over to you, because we want to do something on both of those fronts.
Yeah, look, we've said it a few times on this program, but we are so grateful for the work we're doing out there, doing everything we need to confront this moment and meet this moment. And so on behalf of Defiance members, we're providing both MONARCA and Witness $10,000 grants to support your work. Keep doing whatever you need to do to move us forward. And thank you so much for being a part of this. I'm sure we'll have you all back on. Looking at what's going on in Minneapolis feels like glimpsing into the future. And so I know your tools and your knowledge will be key as we move forward here. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Woo, woo, woo. And also, by the way, as we say that, we have got thousands of defiance.org members and thousands more supporters watching right now. Look, if you feel inspired by these organizations, go to witness.org and give, in addition to what defiance.org is giving. Go check out MONARCA and support them. We'll provide those links to you as well in your member emails. But we're very excited to support those groups so that more efforts can be made by you to help people document these incidents, and also to get more of those Know Your Rights trainings out there. This has a very real impact, and as we have seen, can potentially save lives. So thank you both so much for what you do. And we hope to have a long-term relationship and boosting you while you're out there on the front lines.
Thank you so much.
Thank you both, Jack. Thank you, Laura. Thank you to Witness. Thank you to Monarca. Xander, like I always say, this is my favorite part of the week. These are real people
100%.
doing real things. You saw that picture of the hundreds of people going to those Monarca Know Your Rights trainings. We're going to help support them so that thousands more can make sure that they get information that is life-saving and constitutional right protecting.
I can't tell if I feel better or worse looking at Minnesota. Like it's terrifying the way that obviously ICE agents are behaving, the level of occupation people are facing, but also, goddamn, like we are stepping up. We are stepping up and meeting the moment. And like, I don't know, even that video, what was that? 1 minute video? The whistles. Can you imagine your job all day? You're hearing those whistles the entire time. How demoralizing that has to be. People standing up to you, everyone being terrible to you the entire day. There's not many people I think that can persevere through 100 days of that, 200 days of that. And so I'm just, I guess I found my answer. I'm more fired up.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, man. I'm more fired up, and it's an especially peculiar thing for me to say because I was sort of a custodian of ICE, on a daily basis. But this is not the agency that was created post 9/11. This is not the agency that Republican and Democratic administrations came together around to try to stop terrorism. This has become something else entirely, which leads us, Xander, to our Defiance Actions of the Week. So already, if you're a member of defiance.org, you supported what just happened. You can go out there and brag on social media that you directly supported these efforts to go make sure people are able to document these ICE abuses of power, and that we're doing Know Your Rights trainings on the ground. You did that. You made that happen. Thank you. If you want to go a step further yourselves and take action, here are the Defiance Actions of the Week. I think we have this slide. Fantastic. Xander, let me hit the first two and I'll throw you the back two. Right. First one thing that you can do as an individual, go find or host a Know Your Rights training. We will provide resources via email on these, but they're really easy to find online. In fact, right now, if you go, I think the IRLC has an online hour-long Know Your Rights training. Again, the type of thing that a while back I'd have been like, Know Your Rights training, that sounds boring. Not boring anymore. This is mission critical to people in communities that have been invaded by ICE. Know what you can and cannot do. This is very important. We saw Renee Nicole Good in her Honda SUV end up in a situation that was fatal and terrible, and she probably did know her rights going into that. You should know your rights too. Second thing that we have here is learn how to document these ICE abuses. We just talked to witness.org. These guys are doing this all around the world. And guess what? They've got some of the easiest resources to digest possible on the right ways and the wrong ways to be documenting these interactions with federal agents. This is not something that one or two people in America need to hear. Millions of Americans need to hear this now because they are finding themselves running into these situations where they are encountering agents. Millions of people in the immigrant community, the same thing. So if you go to witness.org, you can check out their Eyes on ICE campaign. Again, we will put in the links to that as well for defiance.org members so that you can find those. But easy to Google, very, very, very important action you can take and share those out to people. Xander, let me flip you the last two.
Yeah, and before I go on here, just shout out to the Defiance members. On our monthly member briefing, we asked, what more do you need from us? And the answer was mostly, we need you to ask us to do more. They wanted more action steps. They weren't happy with one a week. And so, and we're trying to be responsive. People at the beginning of this week said, we want to do something about ICE. So shout out to you all for making your voices heard, being engaged here. And we are, like I said before, Miles and I are going to do our best to be responsive to that and build a club that feels like it's meeting the moment. So thank you. Step 3 here, ask your DA to prep to defend your rights. This is shorthand. And I don't even know if it's entirely accurate shorthand for what Mike Schmidt was telling us to do, right? Which is 2 things: encourage local DAs to work with local law enforcement to investigate and prosecute state law violations. And number 2, set up local evidence collection hotlines. And this allows for anonymous evidence, which can be really challenging to gather, as Mike mentioned, when you have a non-cooperative federal government filled with masked agents. So we are going to lay that out very clearly in the follow-up here and make it easy for you to reach out to your local district attorney. Lastly, we made a cute badge for you to share on social media. We need help growing the club. We need help letting folks know that there is a place, there is a hub to let people know what they can do. It's right here. And so when you are done with your task, or maybe even beforehand, share this badge out on social media, let you know that we've got a club taking action on these things and helping people respond to this modern day Gestapo threat. So thank you, everyone.
And if that's not enough, if you want to do more, you can, folks can still donate whistles. Another thing that I will, again, I'll criticize myself for. When Xander first came to me and said, look, we've got a group that's going to work with us to distribute these whistles around the country, my reaction was, why whistles? Like, this can't matter, because I don't live in a community that is being targeted right now. I didn't understand how important this was. Then I saw the clips on social media, on network news, again and again and again, of people sounding the alarm with these literal whistles. It's made a difference. Members of defiance.org have made huge contributions to make this happen around the country. Whether you're a member or not, you can go to defiance.org/swag. And I think we still have a button that allows you to donate whistles around the country. Not for you, although you could order whistles on Amazon if you want to have them for your own, but we will make sure through our partner, Task Force US, that these get to the communities where the biggest deployments are happening around the country. So check that out at defiance.org/swag. Feel free to order whistles. That's a bonus. Xander, look, I will just say, as we round out the program here, I am, like you, enthused by how defiant people are being, how they are committed to doing all of this lawfully and peacefully, but also how there is now a proliferation of ways to get involved. It's not just a hopeless, well, share news about the latest abuse. It's no, you can do something yourself about this actively.
Yeah, not only can you are the key. Authoritarianism relies on a lack of collective action. You see just how hard it is in Minneapolis for these guys to accomplish their goals with an army of citizens following them around, blowing whistles, obstructing them lawfully, and doing everything they can to minimize the damage to themselves, their neighborhoods, and to demoralize these lawless actions. So it's been really wonderful to see all that. Miles, it's funny what our kind of defiant bingo each month. The first month was whistles, the second month frogs. It's kind of an unexpected strategy each time. I wonder what late January, early February is going to bring.
Oh, just wait, folks. Just wait. We've got exciting actions to hold this administration accountable, and that is happening because people are rising up, and because people are unafraid. The administration is on its back foot. The administration is struggling to respond to the volume of resistance, the volume of defiance it is getting, and that is in no small part because of the patriotic people here who are listening and who take action. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So this has been another weekly mission brief from defiance.org. Thrilled to support Witness and MONARCA in their efforts to hold ICE accountable. We will follow up with members of defiance.org on those actions you can take individually, and we will continue to be talking about this, focusing on this, and surfacing new ways that we can, again, lawfully, peacefully, and defiantly combat these abuses of power. So thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Thank you, Xander, as always, my friend and colleague, for everything you do in this space. Thank you to our guests on the program. And as we always say, stay loud, stay brave, and stay together. We'll see you tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern.